All right, it's 5:35. Let's see. Looks like we've got almost a quorum back. There we go. Looks like most of you are still smiling at least. I guess that's a good thing. All right. Um okay, it seems like most are back. Hopefully everyone is on their way back, but I want to keep us rolling tonight. So, I guess the question then is thinking about what you all came up with before we read the article, and now that you have read the article, were we close? Do you agree with what the author said? Are there points that you would like to dispute that the author brought up? Was it helpful to read through somebody who kind of has obviously given a lot of thought to what games are and aren't? So any thoughts or reflections or how we did or how we didn't do? Yeah, go ahead, Abby.
I definitely thought that a lot of the points that he brought were very interesting, and I've never really thought about a game like that. That decision, like it's dependent on if like your decisions are going to affect your outcome, and I don't know. I thought the Guitar Hero thing definitely threw me a little bit too because I've always definitely thought about it as a game, but he kind of argued that it was a contest. Um, and so I would argue that a lot of the things that we said um, we're kind of close. Like, yeah, there's objectives to the game. Like, there has to be some kind of an overall structure, but that I guess isn't specific to just games. It was kind of all the interactive systems, and then you need a lot more to make it a game than what we said, maybe.
Yeah, and we will be circling back to the decision thing because, as he said, and that's a place that I do agree with him, that's probably the most critical element. And as you're developing your games, that's going to be the one that you probably spend the most time sort of thinking about. We'll come back to that. Steven, you got your hand up there too.
Yeah, it seemed like for him the most important part of the game is not just the decision making, the ambiguous decision making, and that the last part where he said that, you know, you can win or you can lose, but you could have won by more, or you could have lost by more. And sometimes you don't really know like, oh, I made this decision, would that have helped? Would that have hurt? Like so there's he seemed to really care about the an ambiguity and that he talked a lot about things that weren't games, right? And he also said that like your standard, and if you don't know video games, that probably didn't make a ton of sense to you. But fortunately, I know at least a little bit about those, and like the generic model where my character gets stronger but then the missions get harder, so are they really harder and whatever. Like I don't know. I thought that it was interesting about how it seemed that he cared mostly about decisions,
Hmm.
like that's what makes a game or not is the decision you make.
Yeah, I mean, I will confess, I am a big puzzle buff. I love doing puzzles. I like doing, the jigsaw style puzzles, but I also like doing like logic puzzles. I'm a Sudoku person. And, it's for me, the first time I read this article, it did kind of adjust my own thinking about all of that. And like, yeah, I might have considered that a game, but now that I think about it, like when I solve a Sudoku, that is it. There is one solution for that puzzle. And the way that I got there and the way someone else gets there because is basically irrelevant. If we both got to the same solution, all the decisions that I made and all the decisions that other person made were kind of irrelevant because they all led to the same ending point, and there is only one ending point. So he does lean a lot into that idea. And again, that is going to be a central idea to what we are going to be doing. So yeah, so let me do this. Hidden here on this page, I actually had the definition that I would like us to consider and hopefully go forward with. It is almost the definition from the article, but I felt like there was one more element that needed to be in there, which it's interesting that he didn't include it because it's something that he does talk about when he's talking about the different kinds of interactive systems. But so I added basically one additional element to his. But so what he came up with was this idea that it is a system of rules. And if you look back at the things that we came up with in our previous discussion, that came up a lot. We've got structures, rules, regulations, if this, then that, all of those sorts of things. So essentially, the game is the system of rules. And that's another place where some people have to adjust their thinking. We tend to think of a game as the physical parts of the game, like you're going to play the game of life. So the game is the board and the cars and the people and the spinner and the money. That's actually not the game. The game is the system of rules. That is what the game designers spent the most time developing. All the materials kind of come out of that. But what we're really concerned about creating is the system of rules. So that is what we're creating, but not just any system of rules, because there are tons of systems of rules out there which aren't games. So the second thing is the competing agents. And again, this came up in our pre-discussion. We talked about the challenge. We talked about winning and losing, which implies that there are two sides. Somebody brought up the idea of opposing forces. So same thing. So there's got to be at least two forces that are working against each other within this system of rules. Now, he does point out, and this is important to remember, one of the agents can be the system of rules. If you're playing a game solitaire style, if you are playing against a game, that can still be a game in that you are competing against the rules of the game. So it doesn't necessarily have to be, two people or two groups of people that are competing. It is valid to have a person versus the rules. And this might be something to think about from an education standpoint too. And I don't want to get into it too much because it's kind of the topic for a forum this week. But think about competition in a classroom and how competition can sometimes play out in a classroom setting. And I'll just kind of leave it at that. So if you're going to be creating an instructional game, an educational game, you might need to think a little bit about the agents competing and how that's going to play out in a classroom between groups of students, whether you want to be putting groups of students against each other or not. So just something to think about. Then we get, and this is the big one, the meaningful ambiguous decisions. And he spent a lot of time on this. And as I said, we are going to be spending a lot of time on this too, because this is what really distinguishes games from other very similar activities. We did touch on this as well. We had not a simple path to follow. It's not just, oh, I do this and this and this and this, and then I'm done. That's not a game. So, the challenge to reaching it, having a purpose or a reason to it. So, and he talks about both of these. Meaningful, as he said, is not that it's necessarily like personally meaningful to you, although they can be, but rather that it's meaningful for the game, that making a decision can significantly change the direction of the game, lead to a completely different outcome in the end. If you design an instructional game that only has one outcome, that's just a puzzle. That's just putting your students through practice of a procedure that will lead them to a predefined endpoint. For it to be a game, students need to be making decisions throughout the game that change where the game can end up. And in addition to that, the ambiguous piece, which we were just talking about, is the students don't necessarily know when they make the decision that that's going to be the best choice for the end of the game to achieve whatever they're trying to achieve. So again, they have to make the best decision that they can at the time, but not know by the end if that's going to be the best decision to have made. I just rewatched The Queen's Gambit. I don't know if any of you watched that on Netflix. Phenomenal show for a number of reasons, but it really gets you thinking about chess, which is sort of one of the pinnacles of the gaming world in a way. Um, but that whole thing of, one little decision in the third move of the game can trickle out to some completely different end game at the end of the game. And when the player made that move, they were kind of hoping for the best, but they didn't know that decision. And that's why chess players spend a lot of times going back and looking at existing games and trying to figure out where those decisions happened and what happened because of them. And then the piece that I'm going to add to this is the defined end game. And like I said, I'm a little surprised that the author of the article didn't include something like this, because he talks about the difference between simulations and games. Because a simulation can be a system of rules, and it can have competing agents, and it can have meaningful, ambiguous decisions. But a simulation is oftentimes sort of open ended. You finish, you whatever, engage with it for 2 hours until you run out of time, and then you just stop. There's no, you don't reach any sort of an end point. So in order for these to not just be simulations, we need to have some kind of predefined condition that has to be met for the game to come to a conclusion. And again, we covered this. We talked about winning and losing. That indicates that there's a moment in time where a judgment is made. Objective to achieve, a purpose or reason, a challenge you're trying to reach, a start and a finish to the game. So that I think is going to be important too. Is thinking about what conditions do we need to reach in order for us to consider that this game has come to its conclusion. So, thoughts about this? Does this make sense? Anything you would like to dispute moving forward? I know it may feel like I've kind of stacked the deck here, but I'm open to suggestions and adjustments. Or we feel like this is something that we can kind of agree on and move forward with. Nodding heads, thumbs in the air. Okay. So we will come to know this definition inside and out. I've purposefully bolded out and kind of written it in this way, and that it's basically got 4 like check marks that you have to meet. One of the activities we'll engage in a few weeks is have you look at an existing game, educational game, and part of what you're going to be asked to do is to decide if it actually is a game or not, because there are a lot of things out there that we may use the word game for, but now that we kind of have a clearer notion, we may go, oh yeah, that's not really, that's more of a puzzle, or that's more of a contest, sort of a thing. So, like, oh shoot, I just lost it. What's the like Jeopardy style game activity that a lot of teachers use when they're
Kahoot?
reviewing? Kahoot, thank you, Kahoot. Like, people call Kahoot a game. It's on the edge, because it's really, I mean, I guess you can make a decision about, well, no, not even really, because the questions and answers are predetermined. I mean, you can decide whether you're going to answer quickly or not, but that's not really a meaningful decision. If you answer faster, you get more points, so but so things like that. So these 4 parts: system of rules, agents competing, meaningfully ambiguous decisions, and a defined end game. And if you can look at something and check off all 4 of those boxes, then you can be pretty confident that what you've got is actually a game. And then, of course, because this is instructional gaming and educational technology, we're going to need to layer the education piece into that framework and figure out how can we meet these 4 definition points and at the same time get our students to learn something. So that's going to be another part of our challenge there. All right, so this time I'm going to hit submit before I move away from this page so I don't lose that. So that's sort of setting the stage. So for this week, to follow up on what we were just discussing, the first kind of assignment for next week, and I try as much as possible. Unfortunately, Blackboard doesn't let me color code everything in Blackboard. There's certain activities that you can't assign a color to. I try to, as much as possible, put anything that's an actual assignment in red so that those kind of stick out. So the first thing is a follow-up forum on what we were just talking about that is going to ask you to just think a little bit. Now that we have this 4-part definition, and because you are all educators, trying to think a little bit about bringing those 2 things together and where the potential roadblocks or challenges might be. So for those of you not familiar with Blackboard, this is a forum activity. The one thing that I have a problem with Blackboard on when it comes to forums is, for some reason, it doesn't post the instructions for the forum unless you create a new thread, which seems backwards to me. I would want people to look at the instructions and then figure out their post and then post it. So when you go here and you're creating your post, you can do this ahead of time. If you just hit create thread, it'll give you the description of what I'm looking for in the post. And you could either copy and paste that into a Word document or something, or just take a look at it. You don't have to create your post right then. You can always cancel and back out of it. But just think a little bit about that intersection of games and instruction. Look at each of the 4 elements, and kind of, as I was hinting at a little while ago, like, think about how each of those 4 things might align with an instructional setting. Because the goals or the focuses might be different from an instructional standpoint than from a pure gaming standpoint. So give some thought to that. Come up with, I don't know, a paragraph or 2. These don't have to be incredibly long. Excuse me. Post your thoughts. You'll each create your own thread. And then, I really like to stress with these forum activities that they are meant to be conversations. I know there's a lot of professors, and I've experienced it myself, where they're like, create a post and then respond to 2 other students' posts. Like, it's like, just check the boxes off. I hate to put like a number on it like that. So do your post, come back every once in a while, see what other people have posted. If you see something that you feel moved to respond to, or to write a response to, or reply to, then go ahead and do that. Also check in on your own post. And if somebody posts something to you, see if you can't reply something back. So it's not just I throw this out there, somebody throws something back at me, and then we're done. As much as possible, I would love to use these forums more as a discussion place than just I'm just going to put my paragraph up and be done. So I don't put any kind of a number on it, like you have to respond to 2 other people's posts, but just try to engage in the conversations and try to make them meaningful as we go. So that'll be the follow-up to what we were just talking about. Then the remainder of the work really for this week is more about setting the stage for next week, which is going to be about Scratch. As I said briefly in the introduction, Scratch is an online programming environment. It was developed by MIT. It is 100% free. They have guaranteed that it will always be 100% free. Everything that anyone publishes to the site can be looked at, opened up. They call it remixing. You can take anybody else's projects and remix them for yourself. It's designed to be a completely open platform for people to start to learn about how programming works. It's very graphically designed. You basically have a library of blocks, kind of like Legos, and you build a program by clicking those blocks together into a sequence. Visually, they base it off of what they call sprites, which a sprite is just a graphic image. And you can then attach programming to that image to make it do things, and you can interact and all this kind of stuff. So it was kind of designed as a platform to teach young people about how to program, but it's also a great introduction for anybody of any age into the world of programming and kind of demystifying what goes on in a computer program. And it can give you a great tool for building something that's interactive, not just a website where people just go and look at stuff, but you will actually be able to build things where people can click on things and move things around and things can change and they can enter information and it can respond back and do all those kinds of things using this platform. So for next week, there's a bunch of things here, but it's all about just exploring. So I have a Scratch classroom. So I want you to register for that classroom so that all the work that you do, you can share with me and I can see your work and so on. When you set up your Scratch account, and I'm saying this because I am legally required to do so by Scratch, is they're very cognizant of student privacy. So when you create your username for Scratch, do not include like a full name, either first or last. Don't include the name of your school, anything that's identifiable. All I ask that you do is just use your first and last initial as the first two letters of your username, and then you can put whatever you want after that. That way, I'll be able to identify who you are because I can look at your initials and know who I have in the class, but I'm not violating any of Scratch's policies about having non-identifiable usernames. So just set up an account, link into the classroom. You'll have that all set up. And then I've got three separate links here. One of them is just kind of what Scratch is. And I kind of went through that a little bit already, but just from, they've got a page that just describes what their philosophy is behind it. There is a link to a page where you can just search and explore all the projects that are out there on Scratch. And there are probably tens, if not hundreds of thousands of them. And you can look at any one of them that's been published. You can open them up and see how the person created that thing. You can't mess anybody else's projects up. If you do a remix, then it creates a copy of that project for you to work on, leaves the original alone. So that can be a great way to get an idea of the range of things that Scratch can do. And then if you want to dive in even a little bit more, but this might be for more down the road, I also have a link here to their tutorial and lessons page. So they have a whole series of pre-made instructional videos and manuals and stuff that really go through everything that Scratch does. So if you ever have a question about how something works, you can look there too. So the idea, again, like I said, this is a test drive this week. I'm not giving you anything specific to try to create. You don't have to make anything and submit it to me. I just want you to get logged in and just look under the hood, see what it can do, get an idea of the kinds of things that it does. Don't try to get, don't get worried about if you open up a project and you have no idea what it is you're looking at. That's what we're going to be working through over the next couple of months. So we've got time to work through it on our own. I just want you to kind of get that initial impression of how it all works to set the stage for next week. And then the other assignment is just the second forum. This one is a little bit different. This is a single thread forum. So I want us to all have one conversation together. And I just want you to post your initial thoughts about Scratch. What did you like? What didn't you like? What surprised you? have you had experience with something like this before? Is it totally brand new? Um, Whatever, again, a paragraph or two at most, just your initial thoughts. I've already created the thread, so all you have to do is open up the thread. I put the instructions in my post, and you're just going to create yours as replies either to my post, or if somebody else posts something and you want to reply to that, you can reply to that too. But this one's going to be a single thread forum as opposed to the other one where you're each going to create your own thread. I like to use both for different reasons. You kind of get um, different results from the two different kinds of forums. So that is, I mean, that's the other assignment for this week. Is it's really just those two forums and spending some time looking at Scratch. Um, the only other thing I put in there, and I know this is way early, but it's just to start thinking about it. The game projects. Um, it's probably too early to even come up with an idea about what you want to make a game about, but you might think about that a little bit. Probably more importantly is give some thought to whether you think you want to do the game project on your own or in a group. Um, and there are clear advantages and disadvantages to both. So that's why I'm not requiring one or the other. Um, it used to be when this class was taught completely on campus, this was all a small group project, but that was easy because we were all together on campus every week. The groups could meet, they could work together, and so on. Obviously, now that a lot of these courses have gone online in part or in whole, working in a group can be have its own challenges now. It can be harder to get together with each other, to have discussions with each other. Um, so there's some pluses and minuses there. You get to share the work, but it can be more challenging to get through the work. Working on your own obviously has the advantage that you don't have to schedule anything with anyone else. It's you by yourself. So you can work on the project whenever you want and however you want and have total control over it. Um, but obviously the flip side of that is you are the sort of the sole employee of that gaming company. So you're going to be coming up with the game and developing the materials and the rules and so on. So either one is completely doable. I've had totally successful projects from both formats. I just want each of you to feel comfortable with how you want to approach that project. So just start thinking about it. I don't need any responses from you now. Just give it some thought. In a couple of weeks, we'll have a more detailed discussion and get an idea from everybody if they want to work together, if they don't. And then those people that want to work together, we'll try to figure out what the groups are, try to find some common ground. If you know people in the class already, or maybe have a way to get together with a group of students who are in the class, then that might give you a leg up on trying to do a group project. Groups are usually 3 people, maybe 4, but usually more like a 3-person group for the project. So again, no official assignment, nothing you have to tell me. Just start giving some thought to that. So that is really it. I've got the overview here for what we did this week, links to all the materials, the work that's due next time, the 2 forums, and anything that you didn't do. I think at this point, everybody or almost everybody did the introduce yourself form, but if you didn't do that, get signed up for the remind list as well, just so that I have a way to get in touch with everybody quickly if I need to. And that's kind of that. Questions, comments, concerns, criticisms? All right. The roaring sound of silence. That's all right. Okay, well, that is really all I've got for tonight. We got through everything I wanted to get through. We did it in about an hour and a half, which is good. Remember that next week's class will be 5 o'clock, not 4:30, and I will post that in Blackboard as well, just as a reminder. And our focus next week will be on Scratch And it will be a lot of, I will do some like in real time demonstration of some of the aspects of Scratch. I'll be giving you some time to kind of explore on your own and then come back with questions and issues. And we'll just start working our way through the Scratch program and figuring out how to use it and how to get it to do what we want it to do. So that'll be next week. All right, so that's all I've got. Thank you all for being here. It was great to see everyone and get this class underway. I will hang out here in the room until everybody leaves. So if you've got a question you want to hang out and ask me, feel free to stay. But if not, I will bid you all a good evening. Many of you I will see next Tuesday for 5:30, and we'll get that class underway as well. So, all right. Thank you all. Have a great night. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you.